Jimmy brings us over there, and we open the door, and it was like somebody had a fog machine inside. Because it was just smoke, you know, and we got through the smoke. When they're on the couch, there's Jimmy, Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, you know.
Arthur Lee?
Yeah, and we're going, wow. And he became our manager. So Miss Christine from the GTOs worked for Frank, and she said, comes over, she says, Frank wants to see you tomorrow at 7 to play. And I went, oh, right, this is great. So we showed up at 7 in the morning in full Alice, and we start playing songs from Pretty's for You, and all of a sudden we see Frank coming down with a cup of coffee and a robe. What the hell are you doing? And you know, I said, she said 7, and he says, 7 at night. He says, so go ahead, play, I'll listen. And he sat there and he listened, and there were maybe 8 songs that were 2 minutes long with 35 changes in it, you know. And he sat there and he goes, I don't get it. And I said, well, what does that mean? He says, oh no, I'm gonna sign you, because I don't get it. He says, anytime you can get Frank Zappa to say, I don't get it. And then he says, where are you guys from? Like San Francisco? And I said, no, we're from Phoenix. What? He said, now I really don't get it. So he produced the first album, and yeah, it started out very, very silly. You know, the only way it could have started out was something that ridiculous at 7 in the morning with Frank Zappa.
It was meant to be. Also, you answered the question that I thought nothing was possible that anybody jams with Sid Barrett.
Yeah, oh,
like Glenn Buxton, right?
You know, Sid was so great, man. That guy, he was not only did he look like a rock star, but he was so far gone. I came into the kitchen one morning, and he's sitting there at about 6 in the morning. There's a box of cornflakes, and he's sitting there going, and he looks at me and goes, what? So apparently the cornflakes were dancing and singing. And I looked at Dennis Dunaway and I said, how high do you have to be to see cornflakes dancing at 7 in the morning?
We have another question.
Hi, I'm Rob from Cincinnati.
Hey, Cincinnati.
Hey, I know you just played there. I know people probably can't imagine people wanting to leave Alice Cooper, but you've had a lot of band members. So if you estimated how many people left on their own, or how many did you fire?
I've never fired anybody. I have never fired anybody. People fire themselves. You know, what happens is that I pick them. I don't necessarily pick them because, you know, I might hear 20 guitar players, and I'll hang out with them for a few minutes, and I'll go, that guy's going to drive me crazy 4 months down the line. Or this guy, this doesn't have... I'll pick the people that I know are going to fit into the show. You know, they all happen to be great players. You know, I don't mess around with that. You know, the music's got to come first. If we do an 8-hour rehearsal, 7 hours is on the music. You know, the theatrics come easy. That's no problem. I take care of that. But we rehearse the songs forever and ever and ever, so that when you play them, people go, wow. It's, you know.
I was thinking that last night, sitting right there.
Yeah, this is a
top shelf band. I mean,
very
it's undeniable.
tight. But every band I've ever had, I've really made sure that they were the tightest band. Now I've had a few people that in the middle of the tour that just suddenly became somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I never had to fire them. They just kind of like drifted off, and then, you know.
The one thing that's so impressive about your band too is, you know, you came up to me, which I considered you guys a group, you know, the original, the Alice Cooper group, and
yep.
You know, emulating guys like Dennis Dunaway and Neil, and they pay great respect to those players, and you know,
oh yeah,
you hear it in the songs that they're able to capture, you know, your whole history.
Well, this was an interesting thing. I have a thing called the Christmas pudding that I do in Phoenix. I have a thing called Solid Rock Foundation. Any teenager can come in and learn any instrument, all for free. It's all for free. But I do a show that supports that. Well, it gets kids out of selling meth and all this stuff, you know. And in fact, Jordan Sparks started with us, and she won American Idol, you know. But I mean, this is any kid. I don't care who it is. I don't care if you're Taliban. You're welcome, you know. But the thing about it is like, you know, that's something that I really put a lot of time into. Is that my wife and I? That's a very important thing. But you know, to do this show, it's one of those things where I try to put people that don't belong together. I had Pat Boone and Rob Zombie on stage together. And it's really fun to do this thing. And what was the question?
Or firing, or how many left her?
Oh, yeah.
How many you fired?
Okay. Well, and you know, I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know, I think in any profession, and you guys know this, a guy just doesn't fit in, just kind of falls away.
Right.
You know, you've worked with people that you just go, this guy's so talented, why is he such a jerk?
Yeah.
You know?
There's always a reason. You'll figure it out.
Yeah. And later on, you know, it just raises to the top. That personality does. And later on, they might become different people. I don't know. But at the time, I need the people that can play right then, who are the best players, you know.
And most important, easy to hang with, right?
And people that, you know, I had a couple bands that were at each other's throats a few times, and I went, guys, look, I said, if I don't pull an ego trip, nobody else is allowed to, okay? I said, that means when you get on stage, I want you to be reeking of ego. I want you, because now you're bigger than life. Okay, you're bigger than life now, get out there and kill them. As soon as you step off that stage, you're not that guy anymore. Now you're back to just being yourself. That's what I do.
Back to being dangerous.
I leave Alice on stage, you know. So I don't expect to hear any ego from anybody. But on stage, I want you to just be horrifically egotistical.
Well, that's something that, you know, that it kind of gets lost with rock and roll is mystique. You know, we don't have that as much. That's why this is such a cool thing for the fans to be able to come down and ask you some questions, because now everyone's so accessible on social media and everything. But I kind of miss the days where you wondered.
Well, the thing about it is tonight when I play Alice, it won't be anything like this. I mean, when I step on stage as Alice, I am not this. I am this arrogant, you know, condescending, Alan Rickman kind of, you know, aristocratic villain. You know,
it's therapeutic every night, right?
Oh, it's great. It's the best thing in the world, you know. But again, you know, I want to get off stage, and then Alice stays there.
Question over here, please.
Great to see you. Happy belated birthday. Hey, your performance on Jesus Christ Superstar was phenomenal, dude. I'll tell you, that was awesome. Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they always portrayed Herod as some fat, roly-poly guy that was a dummy. And I said, this guy should be egotistical. I mean, you know, he's the king.
Yeah, that was amazing. But in the early days, I've seen a million of your shows. Not a million, but a lot. And you used to abuse the fans a lot. Okay, I was wondering if you ever had any backlash from the fans from abusing them, or any legal troubles from that.
No. And honestly, I think people understand they're part of the show.
Okay.
You know, the ones in the front are definitely in the blood seats.
Right.
You know, and they know they're in the blood. In fact, this is a great story. When Cheryl wasn't in the show, Calico played all of her parts, who's now in Beasto. And one night we're doing the Hollywood Bowl, and there's a scene where she'd come out as Britney Spears. Paris Hilton. And she had all white on, and a little chihuahua right here. The chihuahua was rigged so that the chihuahua would bite into her neck and blood would squirt out. Now, who didn't want to see that? So we're standing there, and I'm looking at the audience like this, and Paris Hilton is sitting. And I went, and she looks at me and I went. She goes, okay. All over, you know. And Paris was great. She said, that was the greatest thing I ever saw. But I mean, I couldn't have put her in a better place. You know, she was right there.
And of course, there's things that never actually happened in the crowd that you really capitalized on. The whole thing with the chickens.
Oh, well, you know, the chicken story is one of the, I mean, I couldn't write this, you know. We're playing, we're pretty much nobodies, but Shep had put together, they asked Shep to help him put together this Toronto Peace Festival. That's an important word coming up later.
Is that for John Sinclair?
Yeah, and the last two acts are John Lennon and Yoko Ono. I think it's the first time they ever played outside the Beatles. They were, you know, and the Doors. Okay, now we knew the Doors, so I mean that was, but we were going to play between them. That was Shep's payment. I want my band to play between those two. Okay, so we get up there, and at the end of the show, we used to open 2 feather pillows, white feathers. And you hit them with the CO2, and it would fill this room, you know. And strobe lights on that and everything, and that's all happening. And I look down, and there's a chicken. And I went, I didn't bring the chicken. My band didn't bring the chicken. Somebody decided, I say I got my wallet, my keys, my chicken. Let's go to the show. So they threw the chicken on stage. I'm from Detroit. I've never been on a farm in my life, okay? It had wings, it had feathers, it should fly. So I picked up the chicken and I tossed it into the audience, thinking that it would fly and somebody would get it and take it home and have a pet. Chickens don't fly as much as they plummet. So it went. And the audience tore it to pieces. This is the Peace Festival. And threw it back on stage. There's blood everywhere. The next day in the paper it says, Alice Cooper kills chicken. And Frank Zappa calls me up and he says, did you kill a chicken? And I went, no. And he says, don't tell anybody, they love it. And right then I realized that this was an Alice up there that was not the villain. I realized the audience wanted a villain because we had all these Peter Pans and no Captain Hook, you know. And I went, I will gladly be Captain Hook, you know. And that's pretty much when I started inventing the character to be much more of a villain. So the chicken story, to this day I don't know who brought the chicken.
We got a
Somebody's
question.
gonna raise their hand and go, it was me.
Stage right.
Over here, hi, Alice. My name's Caleb. I'm in a tribute band that's playing on the cruise called Nerd Halen. And you know, I'm trying to make a living tributing my hero, and I know you were around when they came on the scene. Do you have any stories about when you first heard and saw Edward Van Halen and what happened to you? Like, did you know something big was happening at that time? Thank you.
You're referring about Eddie Van Halen, you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Any great memories or when you first saw Van Halen for the first time?
Oh yeah, Van Halen. Well, they were great. I mean, geez, what a guitar player, you know. The whole band, though, the drummer, you know, everybody in that band was amazing. And David Lee Roth, great frontman. You know, people always knocked him for, boy, he had a great voice. I mean, the whole band was amazing. They were the ultimate party band. You know, they were just absolutely the best party band because their attitude was great. They went out there with the idea, this is our gig. We are the party band. And then they assumed that character and they really could nail it. All
Great
those songs
right?
were so much fun.
Yeah, so much fun.
Yeah, and that was, you know, the thing about the 80s, a lot of people make fun of the 80s. Those bands were so good on video, and they were so good on stage, and they looked great, and I mean to absurdity, the spandex and the hairspray got to such an absurdity that it was hysterically funny. You know, and but the bands were great, and they knew how to do a show. I missed that when grunge came along. All of a sudden, there was a reaction to that. You know, the next generation is going to totally divorce themselves from that generation. So all of a sudden, now we had flannel, and everybody was just depressed. You know, I was at one point was going to like hire like 6 or 7 buses, go up and pick all of the bands up and take them to Disneyland for like 2 days. No heroin. You know,
I remember one
even though those bands were great, Soundgarden, Nirvana, they were all great bands, but I mean, you're sitting there going, "Jeez," you know.
Alice, do you remember the time that we interviewed Joey Ramone together? And
Yes.
he was so nervous because Joey was such a huge Alice Cooper fan, and he finally got a little emotional. He goes, you know, Alice, I always loved you. I love the band, and when I put on I Love the Dead, it makes me happy. It brings the sunshine in. And your reaction was brilliant. You just looked at him and said, I wouldn't tell your therapist that.
Joey was great. That was another band that assumed a character.
Right.
They assumed that character of the Ramones, and they never broke it. You know, I laughingly said, if they ever learn one more chord, they'll be done. But that's what was so powerful about them. And same with AC/DC. The power is in the simplicity of those bands. You know, they're not King Crimson, you know, or they're not the Mothers of Invention, who are like beyond great players, or Steely Dan. But the power was like the Stooges. Iggy's power was in the fact that it was in your face, and the band never reacted to what he did. The first time I saw Iggy was in Detroit, and it was just dun 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 for about 8 minutes. But Iggy is standing on the audience. They're holding him up. He's contortionist. He's got peanut butter all over him, and you know, I'm going, okay, I got competition. But we've become friends, you know, ever since that. He created his own theater. Bowie created his own theater. Kiss created their own theater. I never was really threatened by any of those bands because they were their own entity. You know, nobody was trying to do Alice Cooper, so I was fine with that.
Yeah, but you get to leave, as you mentioned before, you get to leave Alice on stage when you walk off. But the Ramones stayed in character literally 24/7.
Yeah.
They were told they cannot leave their apartments in New York without dressing in the stage outfit.
Was that true?
Yeah.
Wow.
Joey insisted, and even they had, when they drove around in the van, they kept the same seats their whole career. You were not allowed to sit in somebody else's seat.
There was a lot of OCD going on.
Yeah.
That's a bit compulsive. Yeah, but they were, you know, again, they were great. They knew exactly who they were. You know, and a lot of bands are searching for identity. You know, I always say, you know, if you're going to have a great band, remember, when you get on stage, you have to entertain the audience. Just playing your songs, okay, well, that's fine. They could buy a record and hear that. Or if you're a great band, that's great. But you got to give the audience something their money's worth, you know?
Which he does every night, right? I got one story. I'm sorry.
Hey, Alice. I enjoy your radio show,
Thank you.
and I always say that it's so cool because when you talk about music history and a lot of the players, like stuff like Jimi Hendrix, when you talk about how he had a nervous laugh,
Yeah.
and people didn't know that. Is there anybody that you personally would have liked to have met that you've met everybody? It just seems like you've known, but maybe somebody that knew or in the past that you
Yeah,
would have liked to meet?
Errol Flynn. The sword I use on stage is Errol Flynn's sword. It's the sword that I use is one of the swords he used in Captain Blood. So I own that sword. That's why that sword's on every tour with me. Errol Flynn was great because, I mean, he was just so good at what he did. Of course, you know, Bela Lugosi, all those guys. When I got to Hollywood, I always said, if I ever make it, I mean, I know I'm going to meet the Beatles, who were the nicest people I've ever met in my life. The Rolling Stones, the nicest people. Elvis, Sinatra. I always found that the guys that were the nicest people were the guys on top. And the guys that were the jerks were the guys on their way up. Because they didn't know how to handle who they were, right? And so the ego was just, like this. But the guys that were on top didn't have to prove anything. They had already done it. So Elvis was the nicest guy, funniest guy. I'll tell you, you want to hear my Elvis story? Okay.
I was going to prompt you if you could go into it.
I felt it. I felt it.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1972, I think it was. I'm in Las Vegas, and I get a call. Elvis wants to meet you. Wow. Okay. So I get to the Hilton Hotel. He had the entire top of the Hilton Hotel. And I get there, and four people, there were three people also that were going to meet. It was Chubby Checker, Liza Minnelli, and Linda Lovelace. And me. Three of us left that night. One stayed. Now, I don't know what Elvis and Chubby Checker did there. No, okay, that was a good setup. But anyways, we all went up in the elevator, and then they check us for guns, which is silly, because once you get up, there's guns everywhere, They say, if you're going to shoot Elvis, you have to shoot him with his own gun. So,
We got time for one more question.
this gets good. This gets really good. So Elvis walks in, and he goes, "Hey man, you're the kid with the snake, right?" I said, "Yeah, I dig that, man. That's cool, all the makeup and all that stuff, man. That's cool." He says, "You're from Detroit, not Detroit, Detroit." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Come here, I want to show you something." So I go into the kitchen,